They say we should have known better than to fall so deep down into this rabbit hole.
Get
we found.
ready. It's time again to venture down the rabbit hole into the world of cybersecurity. You're plugged into the podcast for security leaders and practitioners with a business sense. Prepare for unique interviews, insights, and practical advice that makes your job just a bit easier. And now, please welcome your guides on this adventure, James Jardine and the White Rabbit, Raf James.
Hey, good morning, good afternoon, and good evening. Welcome down to Security Rabbit Hole to yet another edition of the Down to Security Rabbit Hole podcast. This is Raf, and I've got my good buddy James sitting just over there with his equipment, I think, working all right.
I was going to say, I'm hopefully back in sync. You know, this is going to get a little crazy. We start too many music references going on.
I swear that was an NSYNC reference just now. I'm about to disconnect you.
I know. In last episode, I didn't say it on there because I didn't want to, but I did in the in LinkedIn when I shared it. Said, "Who's down with EPP?" It had to happen.
Our guest is over there just holding her head in her hands because we've already gone off the rails like 9 seconds in. All right, folks, thanks for joining us. This is another one of those fun episodes where we find friends that we haven't. I've been saying this too many times. James, I cannot believe we haven't had her on the show before. Welcoming, incredibly, a first timer, JJ. How are you?
Hey guys, I'm doing great.
And all right, for those people that haven't been around InfoSec long enough or just don't pay attention, give them a little bio of who you is.
Oh, Jesus. Well, I mean, if you're on Twitter, I'm JJX on Twitter.
Well, there it is. Jeez, the second coming. We're all good. Good start.
Yeah. So I've been in security and network architecture for over 20 years, pushing 30 at this point. And yeah, so that's what I do.
And you were at the same company how many years?
Okay, I knew you were going to go there.
I had to. I'm sorry. This is that's too big of an achievement not to acknowledge.
Right. Okay. So I did just kind of leave the company I was with as a full-time employee. And so I started my own company. They are one of my customers, so I'm still engaged on some security projects there. But I was there for 22 years full-time and 28 total years.
Good golly. 22 years. Wow. All right. That's admirable. That is seriously. So, okay. Now you've started your own thing. Tell us about what you're doing.
So what I ended up doing in the other company was a lot more than I guess I signed up for. And I'm always up for doing more, but I was kind of running a whole section of the company, which didn't leave me a lot of flexibility or free time to focus on, continuing to learn and stay up with new technologies and help people in ways I wanted to help outside of, just strict architectural stuff. So I started Vision Security, where I'm continuing to do some of those advisory and consulting services, but with a little bit of a twist. So some security architecture, network security architecture services, but a little bit of technical coaching and some mindfulness and leadership services in that as well.
Wow. Okay. Fancy. Well, hey, we wish you a good start. You seem like you have a very full office already. Just kidding.
I'm a little bit of a minimalist in some ways. I don't like a lot of clutter.
Oh God.
So I'm not a knick-knacky, cluttery kind of person.
It's funny to think looking at Raf's background right now.
and you don't actually, yeah, right? Ooh. My background, yeah. I've got some stuff back there. Do not look at the shelves.
Yeah, I'm totally checking out the shelves now. Are those?
I have mostly books, bourbon, and I have a couple of whiskeys up there. I've got some. Let's see, what else is there? A photo from my attempt at playing baseball as a preteen. That was fun. That lasted exactly one season because I was just as awful at baseball as you would think as a European off the boat kid would be. So anyway, well, this is so look, security and network architecture, a topic that I think is largely overlooked anywhere outside the Fortune 250. Agree or disagree?
Yeah, I totally agree, which is why I went down this rabbit hole of work, I guess.
All right, ding. That's the bell. That's once. So
you need a counter to show up at the top.
Yeah.
Right? I need to create like a counter for how many times the word rabbit hole
What are you
gets
talking
used.
about? Do we need architecture? We got zero trust.
Whoa. Whoa. All right. Well, gauntlet thrown. JJ, over to you.
You know, I did network access control. I mean, I still do. But I did network access control consulting and implementations for a very long time. And everybody kept telling me, NAC is dead, NAC is dead, NAC is dead. And I think we heard that for decades. And I was living a good life off of that money. So it definitely wasn't done. It wasn't dead. And I think, for me, zero trust is just kind of the shift of that towards a different boundary of networking. And so I'm all up in zero trust and SASE technologies right now. I think that's not only a legitimate architecture and strategy, but I think it's long overdue. And it's something we've been asking manufacturers for a while. I'm on some advisory councils for technology manufacturers. And we've been saying, look, we need something that works differently. Like we need technology that acknowledges that most of our services are cloud-based. And we've been saying that for years. So we're still not like at the point where traditional network access control technologies and zero trust architectures that can deal with cloud stuff are married and merged, but we're getting there. And I think it's pretty exciting for me because a lot of the work I've done over the past, couple of decades has been sitting between the security teams and the networking teams. I see a lot of opportunity there because for me, that's like a perfect place for me to go in and fix something and the type of people and team challenge that I like, I guess.
Well, I mean, look, I think NAC was dead almost as much as mainframe, right? I feel like those two were at I think those were the funerals were side by side, and somebody forgot to tell those technologies they had died. Although to be fair, back in the early 2000s, we tried to use NAC at GE scale, and that was I think the phrase I would use was exceptionally challenging. Because I think the technology simply was it was young, and B, it was implementing a young technology at a scale that they hadn't thought of before in a diverse environment that it was going to struggle in. But I think that zero trust is this is the only logical conclusion. This is the only logical place we could have gone because in the mid to late 90s, we had an opportunity to understand how to segment things and how to compartmentalize, but we didn't, right? This is like the recurring theme in security. We saw an opportunity, we made plans to go attack it, and then did nothing, right? And time went by, and then we had to create all this other like market space in cyber because to address the stuff that we could have fundamentally built in way back when. And so I look at it and go, well, yeah, like if we could have just figured out how to compartmentalize and segment, I mean, micro segmentation is different, but if we could have actually figured out how to segment the finance people from the support people, from the servers, from the workstations, from the database, from the app and the application layers, like if we had actually figured that out in the 90s, early 2000s, we wouldn't be in the catastrophic mess that we're in today. At least in the traditional networking sense.
Yeah, but I mean, I think this is the problem, right? Is that everybody manufacturers stayed in their lane a little bit too much. And so your traditional networking, and even now with zero trust. So, there's a lot of content and people talking about zero trust at the conceptual level with models. What I do with zero trust is what I call applied zero trust, which is which shit do you need to buy and how do you integrate it into what you have to make it work? Like, how do you actually get from here to there for your environment, which is quite a bit more, challenging because there's a lot of factors that go into that. But it's, same thing with NAC, right? If you looked at NAC, and I'm going to use them just because I think it's a perfect example of what's going on Zero Trust. Your endpoint security vendors had NAC products. They weren't network-based NAC. They were endpoint-based NAC back in the day, like Symantec did it and a few others did it. Your traditional networking vendors had NAC. So Cisco acquired 5 technologies that didn't integrate together and flipped everything each time, and did everything on the network. So did a couple of other vendors. And then you had, companies like Forescout that came up and used their kind of
remember those guys.
Yeah, and they're still there. The behavior analytics and actually looking at traffic, and they were the first ones doing that because they took their security tool and turned it into a NAC tool. If you look at Juniper and the stuff they sold to Pulse, they took an SSL VPN appliance and turned it into a NAC tool. So the point is that there were maybe 6 classifications of NAC products that had the same little feature list in the architecture, but from an implementation standpoint, what and how you deployed it and how it worked and the features you got out of it in your environment were very different. And so what happened a lot of times is, most of the failed implementations, people pick the wrong product or type of product. And Zero Trust is kind of the same, because there's Zero Trust from firewall vendors that is a completely different architecture and a different deployment model than a Zero Trust product from a traditional, cloud provider. So we're still kind of in that weird, mushy, James is right. It's kind of this, fluffy gray tumbleweed of technology, but we work through it with NAC. I think we'll work through it with Zero Trust.
It's interesting.
James, I'm stealing that.
It's interesting to think, like, all these conversations we have, Raf, we talk about liability insurance. We talk about this, like, everything is kind of that same, like, you need to know how to navigate this. And the problem is most people don't know how to navigate this. So how do you identify the right people to help you navigate it? Because going on your own, I mean, it's almost like we're at crypto here. Like, don't roll your own. You have to have a specialist come in and help you do this. Because if you try to do it on your own, you're inevitably going to implement it incorrectly.
JJ, I want to put something on your business card: the NAC Whisperer.
Oh God. I moved on to Zero Trust now. I'm going to keep.
Fine. The Zero Trust Whisperer.
Okay, sure.
Helping you navigate the squishy tumbleweed of Zero Trust. Wait, squishy gray tumbleweed of Zero Trust. I love it.
Yeah.
Maybe there needs to be a tumbleweed
slogan
across it. Yeah, tumbleweed on the business card. There you go.
We're here to solve problems for you, JJ. I mean, we're designing business cards, giving you a logo.
We're not designers. That's clear.
Yeah, right. Well, so the funny thing is, when we talked about segmentation back then, it used to be identity and firewall rules, right? The technology we had was to put firewall rules in between everything, and then things like Forescout came along, right, and gave us better. But I feel like that all these technologies, I think maybe this is just a curse of the way the security industry works, is. I wrote a rant about all this a long time ago, but like, none of this shit works together.
Yeah.
Like, it's not built to work together. You've got this product over here that does it on the network side. The identity thing says it solves it on the identity side. You're like, yeah, but they're part of the same. Like, why can't I just plug these two things together? And it's like,
duct tape security, Raf. That's the new business. Like that.
Seriously,
James, we call it automation.
Yeah, right. XOR automation. You know what? The Duct Tape Security Podcast has been born. We're just going to rebrand DtSR.
That's what you're doing, though, right? I mean, you're taking all these different pieces and you're figuring out, like, for me to do it on my own, it's not going to work out that well. If I find somebody that knows what they're doing, they know the products, they're able to say, okay, I can pick this one, I can pick that one, and here's how we can make that work together without you having to reinvent the wheel of trying to figure out how do I make this work, and then you just have two disparate systems that are, causing you more pain than less pain.
Yeah, but I mean, the problem is, historically, the problem has been that you get these things integrated, and I've done a lot of custom integrations between platforms for identifying threats and then enforcing, right, like a NAC type things or authentication type things.
Oh, I know where this is going.
You get it set up, and then, some jerk product manager changes the API calls or changes this or changes that, and it breaks everything. And in a production,
Right.
and it's the same thing, not to go old school here, but it's the same problem we've had with IEEE's 802.1x standard on the wired side. Like each manufacturer did their own flavor of it off standard. And so when you went on a different code chain or you did an upgrade, even within the same manufacturer, a lot of times something would stop working, or something would work that shouldn't, or whatever. And it was a hot mess. And so that's just not scalable in a large production environment, unfortunately. But, now with some of the, the different buffet of zero trust products is we have so much overlap. If you look at the SASE stuff and you look at the different, again, that there's different kind of flavors of zero trust products out there, and you look at secure web gateways and you look at the CASB and you look at this and you look at that, and suddenly you've got this Venn diagram where, there's 5 colors deep of just junk you're looking through, trying to figure out how many of these things do you need and to disable the features so that one thing isn't kind of overlapping with the other. So now we swung the pendulum the other way. Raf, you happy?
No, I'm just as annoyed because now, listen, it's no secret. I'm a platforms guy. I will take the platform that does 80% of all the things, and it does them better, right? It doesn't do 100%, than each individual thing at 100%. However, I think the wider, and I used to refer to this as the IBM problem. I guess you could call it the HP problem, the C8 problem, or whatever problem. The wider you go with the solution set you're trying to stick together, the more inflexible and proprietary it becomes, because you gotta get a bunch of different acquisitions that you've made because you've not designed this in house to work together. And every time, and I knew where you were going with this, all these brittle integrations that, like, oh God, please don't make an update to if you've got an API, right? Like, please don't make an update to the button that makes that thing go, because everything breaks if you do that. Or they'll, somebody, I had an issue one time where there was a dependency on a CSV output that would go automatically input into another system via Perl script. Yeah, a Perl script. And they changed from commas to semicolons for an inexplicable reason. And everything broke. And you're like, why? Why did you do this? And the answer was, I don't know, somebody in product management thought it was a good idea. But and of course they went, well, why would anybody use anything except for our tech? And our tech all works together.
Yeah, you had your Perl scripts. We had our syslog files back as integration mechanisms during the day. Yeah.
What was the scripting language? God, I can't remember it now. That used to work. It wasn't Tickle. It was there was a vendor that made system monitoring products, and I can't think of the name of it. They had their own scripting language that worked across Unix and Windows. But I'll caveat that with usually. And they were infamous for how it's going to be in the back of my head now. Dave Santaramo, if you're listening to this, you'll remember, and you'll have to remind me later. But anyway, I ran into the company again because they've reinvented themselves, and I ran into them recently, one of their product managers. I'm like, hey, have you guys fixed blah blah blah? He's like, I didn't. I must be before my time, and which is not a surprise. But yeah, so yeah, get off my lawn. Well, look, integrations is where. Well, even to step back before that, Jade, you mentioned implementations of 802.1x, right? Like the standard was fantastic. It's just that everybody implemented it differently. I feel like zero trust in that same spot. I don't know that it is that bad. Is it that bad?
No. I think it goes back to picking the right product and architecture, because doing a zero trust deployment with with the firewall vendor, and even within the firewall vendors, they have different capabilities. But let's just kind of, I'm going to lump. I don't want to mention vendors and have people think I'm promoting or bashing. But doing it with a firewall operating system and traditional, virtual or physical firewall boxes is very different than doing it with. I will pull this out because I know they're kind of common, is Zscaler, right? So something it's kind of cloud native, cloud born, managed in the cloud, and agent based. The difference being that when you take something, from a a cloud vendor and you're doing it with an agent, it doesn't quite give you what you need if you do have campus environments and you do have local resources. There's nothing that stops you from accessing. If I'm sitting there in the office, that doesn't protect me or protect the resources or the assets, right? That's not how that's designed to work unless we re-architect what that site look, what our sites look like. Whereas some of this other stuff that's more, network native, firewalls, switch route companies, things like that, they're kind of less mature on that cloud and application side, but they are going to give you the benefit of that zero trust flavor on the local network. So it's kind of like there's always trade-offs, and that's a decision for each organization to make for themselves.
Yeah.
You're rolling your eyes. I can't tell if that's your thinking face or you're rolling your eye face. They look the same right now.
Maybe both. I don't know. At this point, I think I'm just trying to do both at the same time. Look, the theory behind zero trust is I would say at this point well accepted, right? But I think what we're running into is the same. Do you remember we were at I think it was Sector? I think you were standing around with. I was in a group with and somebody asked Hoff what it would take for cloud architectures to be the sort of de facto, and he just looked at him and said, for us to die off, like, right? And he meant that literally. And that both annoyed and scared me a little bit because I realized that, yes, most of us are dinosaurs. But the network architecture, from a network perspective, the architectures we have today are largely residual, and some of them are directly remnants of things that you and I put in place 20 some odd years ago. Like, it hasn't changed that much. We've just, duct taped, to James's analogy, Wi-Fi onto it, right? And then we said, hey, you know what we could do? Like, let's use CASB because we've got some SaaS stuff over there. And then let's, oh, by the way, yes, cloud, sure. That's going to go down this express route or down this VPN and suddenly you're like, well, why can't you implement a single zero trust technology? Like, because you've got 27 network architectures stuck together, like in ways that if somebody sneezes, the whole thing stops working. Like, please don't firmware upgrade anything in the environment because if anything gets upgraded, all of it breaks.
Yes.
Like,
but
yes.
but I'll say this too. Like, I feel like I go through mental circles with myself on this because on one hand, having worked in technology for almost 30 years, consistently that whole time, it's, I feel like Jack Daniels sometimes. Like, I have that, get off my lawn kind of feeling like all of the new professionals coming in are so excited, like they've discovered this or there's this new technology. And I'm like, no, these are bell bottoms. We had those 15 years ago. They were called this, right?
Yeah, right.
And it's just, so for me, it's like I kind of get jaded with things because I'm always learning that whatever that new next thing is. And so, with my last company as an integrator, we were in SDN before anybody had production stuff. We were in betas with manufacturers. We were doing everything. We were like, this is going to be awesome. Everybody's going to do this. This is the first kind of big push to take a legacy kind of network architecture and modernize it into something that's smarter and application based and blah, blah, blah. And this was,
and how'd that go?
More than 10 years ago. And nobody could do it right from a manufacturer perspective. You're sitting in these things with these developers and product managers, and they're finally at the point like, you know what, we're doing it because the other, Acme competitor over here has it. We have to say we have an answer for it because it's a requirement on certain bids, and we are working to develop the technology, but it's just nobody has it baked and it's not working, and we've got it in the lab, and I'm going, no shit. So, so this is the cycle.
It works great in the lab.
It works on my machine.
Which
That's
right. Which is, we have all this new stuff that could happen. Back to your comments about, we would have to die off for this stuff. I think there are a lot of us that do want to push the industry forward, and especially networking, because, we're just now getting to the point where we have manufacturers where we can manage things with APIs instead of SNMP. where we can cloud connect and fully manage things that way and interact with the network infrastructure, do zero trust provisioning. There's no reason for us to be doing line by line, conversion codes from an old platform to a new one these days. We do it sometimes, but we shouldn't have to anymore. And so, back to, there's all this cool new stuff, but then half the time cool new stuff, no worky. And so it's just,
she's optimistic. She says half.
Listen, we've got tumbleweeds and no worky going on this business card. Like that is.
I'm sorry, James.
Worky.
I'll be very prim and proper for you. I'll be boring for you.
Oh no, we're enjoying this. Don't confuse sarcasm for the fact that we're not completely in line with this.
No, yeah.
Speaking of SDN, like that was a tech that everybody talked about and could not shut up about, and every vendor, and then like it went quiet. Whatever happened to SDN?
I think SDN and IPv6 ran away and eloped somewhere in an island.
With DNSSEC.
With DNSSEC, yes.
Oh, God.
They're still in their honeymoon. They'll come back. They'll come back in a few years. I think
I feel like
that way, right? Like with SD-WAN technologies, some of which are really mature and granular and really cool. I mean, at a bare minimum, they all function better than what we had before. But the products that are really kind of like focused on that, and that's all they do it really well, and it's pretty cool.
Well, so that kind of brings us back to the beginning where we said, is it full circle on essentially point solutions that you have to duct tape together versus platforms. And I feel like you can do one thing really well. The more things you try to do, the more you screw them up. But on the flip side of that coin is the opposite. The more things you do, the better the chances of them actually working together versus, these point solutions, the odds of any of that stuff actually working together in a meaningful way that doesn't break on every 0.0x release is nil. So this can't be, okay, I guess this to me is frustrating, but this can't be just a security thing. Like is all IT this broken?
I think so.
Damn it.
Definitely, so for the past, again, however many years I've worked, I started off working with, just traditional IT teams, right? So sysadmins, network admins, and architects, wireless. 12, 15 years ago, the security piece of that came in, and I've been straddling, the two of them. And I think security gets a lot more visibility and a lot more money. And so,
Fair.
one of the many frustrations for me is, seeing an organization that just kind of throws money at stuff instead of investing in, people and processes and, a consultant, not necessarily me, but somebody to come in and kind of guide them, because it's almost impossible especially in IT with everybody kind of in firefighting mode. I don't know anybody that works in IT that hasn't been burned out, isn't at burnout. In security, it's kind of the same, but for different reasons. But this firefighting mode doesn't let people, kind of let their brains think freely. I mean, our brains biologically operate differently when we have some mental space to process things. And we don't, technologists don't have that a lot of times. They're just kind of going. And so we kind of shoot ourselves in the foot at an organization level because we have people that are just beating against a wall constantly, and you can't step back and think about how could we do this better. And so I think stuff's broken. I don't think it's quite as visible. I think it will be more as we get into a lot of these, security, compliance mandates that kind of trickle down. A lot of what I'm doing right now is CMMC stuff. And
that is what everybody's talking. That and SOC 2. Either somebody's working on getting a SOC 2 or a CMMC certification, or both. And SOC 2, if you're going that route, you're going down the COSO Trust Services criteria, which is like 7,000 different things that it's almost like an ISO, right? It's like you should know how to do this. And then CMMC, I feel like, is very similar. Is any of it driving us to a better security state, an actual better security state? Maybe.
I do believe it is. And everybody always says compliance doesn't equal security, but at least it kind of shines some light on things for people. And a lot of, my customers have been kind of all different sizes, mostly mid-market level and up, but public sector as well. And so, for me, I've had a lot of clients I've worked with over the years that in financial, in healthcare, in public sector, government, that are, they're doing things a certain way because it's how it's been done and it's what they had the resources to do. If the outside world saw it, they would probably go, "Oh my God, what are you doing?" Like for me, it's my job to be not judgmental about that, but to help them make smart decisions, because we all get to that point where you're just trying to not drown. You're just trying to keep the wheels on. And if somebody tells you change the wheels while the car's running, you just have to have the right resources to do that. And these people aren't given the right resources, don't know the right resources to ask for.
Yeah, I don't know that I believe that security is not compliance isn't security anymore. The longer I'm in this industry, the more I believe that security for the sake of itself, right? We just need to do better security to make the company more secure is a losing endeavor all day long. Unless there's a reason not to do high risk things with customers' data or whatever, then the business will take those risks all day long because there's no consequences. Why would you do it? Why would you put money out just because it's a good idea if there are no consequences for it, for being bad at it, right? So compliance has to have teeth, but it also has to, it has to exist. Otherwise, there's going to be there's no agreed upon bar, which we have to clear, right? It's just be secure. We all know that's nonsense. So that, like, you must be at least this tall to ride this ride. Like, that's the compliance frameworks we have. If they suck, fine, fix the framework. Don't complain that it exists. I don't know. Am I nuts?
No, I think it's a starting point, because the other thing too that I see in organizations, and like James, I don't know what your experience has been with this, but is the organization tends to focus on the security or controls that the team they have hired is comfortable or experienced with, not what the organization needs. And so the compliance and the risk frameworks and models force people to think outside of their box. I'm a networking person. If you ask me to do some type of risk analysis on an application or code, or even to think about that, obviously I think about that because it's my job, but to think about that as a network professional, right? If that was my role, I'm not thinking about that because I don't even know what that looks like. And so, you have sysadmins that came from managing, servers and endpoints, and network admins, and, people that were, application developers, and you haven't had that centralized security architecture. And a lot of these organizations, their idea of a security department or team is, we hired somebody to manage firewalls and look at those logs sometimes.
And that may even be a stretch for some orgs.
Yeah.
Well, you see the same thing, I think, from the AppSec side, right? Listen, I'm the same way. I'm just the opposite of you. Network is the same thing for me. But, you look at AppSec side, you look at the job postings, and, they want the unicorns that do everything. Like, oh, you're going to do code review. You're going to do this. You're going to do that. You're going to do this. Like everything under the sun. And then they never really want you to actually do 3/4 of that. You'll end up doing maybe a small piece, and that small piece is based on who did they hire. Did they hire somebody that's really good and motivated to test? All right, well then, that company focuses more on pen testing their apps than they do doing code review. Or, did you hire somebody that comes from a development background and is good at automating things? And now all of a sudden we're seeing automation put into our dev cycles, and, things actually are happening. But yeah, I think it's the same thing. Depending on who you hire, who you have leading it, as to what they see as important, right? I mean, if you get people that come from that whole like SaaS, DaaS background and that's where they're pushing, then that's where your organization is going to go. And I think a lot of that outside of some federal requirements, same thing with a lot of even like your regulations that you follow, like, these compliance things that you push, what is the person that you're bringing in? What do they follow? Like maturity models, they're going to follow what they're comfortable with. They're not going to step outside of that comfort zone and say, oh, how do we do this other stuff? Because it's going to make us better at what we're trying to do.
Totally agree with that.
Well, so I guess the final bit on that is that if we didn't have 27 different compliance frameworks, 7 for each industry and market vertical, we'd be all right. But JJ, I'm mid-market and lower enterprise, right? So I'm a different market segment than you, and arguably my customers are completely screwed when they look at these compliance initiatives, because they're like, I can't sell to anybody that I want to do business with because they require SOC 2, and then my federal customers want a CMMC, and then these guys want me to get a PCI DSS, and suddenly you're like, I have 4 people in IT. How the hell are we going to get that done? I feel like we've created this. I don't want to. Like, we've set the bar so high, right? The security is this. It ended up as this sort of ephemeral, like, thou shalt do things that look good, right? And then we had like the people that were sort of like, we're just going to do our best. And then we had like the absolutists. Remember those days? Like, you have to be ultimately secure, or otherwise it doesn't matter. Like, okay, well, that's great. You people lost, clearly. Well, show me a place that's ever happened, right? Oh, the government, no. Big companies, no. Small companies, no. Mid-market, no. Individuals, no. Okay, so it's failed, right? So it was all giant gray squishy tumbleweeds flying down the street. I had to tie that back in. Sorry. That's how my brain works. And so we went, okay, well, we got to do something coherent. And each industry group got together and went, this is what we think we should do. This is what we think it is. They didn't talk to anybody else outside of their industry. And so they created these high bars. And then these smaller companies that were doing just fine, business-wise, not security-wise, business-wise, were suddenly like, I'm so overwhelmed. What do I do? And then we have 27,000 products VARs want to sell them, and consulting companies that know this framework or that framework or this framework or that thing. And I cannot say this enough. I feel so bad for companies that are in that mid-market space, that smaller, at the lower end of the enterprise space, that have to have compliance, that have to have a measurable, provable level of security. Think SOC 2 type 1 and type 2, right? And yet they can't spend $2-3 million on their cybersecurity program. And so they look at partners and vendors, and let's face it, a lot of them out there suck. I know, I've worked at some. We've all worked at some. And like, we've created this industry just makes me angry, and I want to quit it so often, because we've created more solutions that don't work that I think exacerbate the problem. And you've been around as long as, longer than I have in certain, at least at one company, and kind of what you've been doing and focusing on. You've probably seen this even more pronounced.
Yeah, I mean, and that's part of, why I wanted to do what I'm doing with my company and have kind of technical coaching, so that organizations could have, somebody to go to that's a subject matter expert in a, pretty broad area to go, what's best for me, or what do I need to consider or look at that's not, because it's hard. And I understand, the thing is that when you work for, well, especially an integrator or a reseller or a consulting company, which, I think we've all had experiences there one way or another, you kind of really see how you lift the skirt, right? You see all behind the stage and all of the workings. And
I've got a Splash reference in my head. Sorry.
and
I am that old.
You are that old. The thing I like about, the integrator I was just with is, they have a very customer first mantra. and won't sell something to somebody if it's not the right thing. But it's a constant battle with the manufacturer partners. I mean, I've been on phone calls. The role that I was in before, I was in phone calls where, more than once, manufacturers threatened to take our letter of supply away, remove us from the contracts that we were top performers in, right? We were the number one reseller, not the reseller, but the number one, seller on this contract of their stuff. Number two was a tenth of what we did. And they're threatening us to take away the contract because we're selling a competing product, or maybe even we sold a competing product into a specific account they wanted to get into. And it's hard because most resellers don't work like that. And so what happens is, you get, it's somewhere along the way, somebody gets bullied into putting, if not into a specific product, they get bullied into blinders where, somebody is, and, I'm not going to name names, but definitely when you look at the national resellers, all of their reps, they have like vendor manufacturer specific reps. They are incentivized on specific product lines, on specific products, like specific SKUs. It's just how the world works. And so when they call you up and they're trying to set up a meeting and get a technology in front of you, they don't give a shit about what you need. The only thing they care about, for the most part, obviously there are some, from sales reps that are an exception to this rule. And I've worked with several of them and seen them in the field, and they're awesome. But 90% of them, the only thing they care about is selling you that thing. And they're going to show you that thing, and they're going to convince you that that thing is the right thing. And so, I've always for years said, figure out your requirements first, figure out what your cheeseburger is and what your French fries are, and don't let somebody bring you in a whole plate of French fries if you need a cheeseburger.
I like fries though, but good point. Listen, integrity is, hate me if you want, but integrity is a tough thing to come by in this industry. Everybody's got their thing to sell. And I've said for years that if we were truly interested in solving some of our deepest challenges, we would have to acknowledge that most of the products out there need to go away. And we wouldn't all make as much money as this industry is making, because, there's millions and billions to be made in selling aspirin. There's about half that to be made in actually curing the disease, right? So I don't know. I don't know where that puts us, except for out of time for today. Thanks for joining us, man. This has been fun.
Yeah, this is great. It was great to see you guys. Thanks for having me on.
We need to have a regular, now I'm thinking of guests that we've had that we could do regular segments with. They're just like story time. Like, hey, here's what I've seen recently. Like anonymize, particular use cases around things. I think with your our enterprise architecture and networking experience, I think you could have some very interesting case study type, use case type stories that we could teach people from. If you're interested, guys, let us know. That might be something we could try, like a offshoot podcast that we could just do use case stories. I think it'd be kind of fun.
Let's come up with a better name.
Stories. Yeah, it's funny because
ghost stories to tell in the dark of the data center.
I thought about writing a blog. There's sometimes I start to write a blog because I'm dealing with, or have dealt with, maybe 5 different organizations kind of tackling something, and I'm under really strict NDAs with a lot of my customers, right? And it's not about any one of them, but it could be about any one of them, and I'm scared like they're going to go, "Ooh, that's about us," and I'm like, it's actually about you and 8 other people. So, but yeah, it's fun to be able to talk about some of the stuff, because there is stuff to be learned from that, and it's nice when it's like you're not in the boat alone. Sometimes to just know, I hate to say misery loves company, but it just maybe not being lonely in that dark corner of terrible security decisions.
Yeah, this is a weird industry, and I feel like there's things that we simply either refuse to learn or refuse to accept. I don't know which, maybe both, but we do tend to reinvent the wheel twice a day, 3 times on Sundays, and you're right. We have so much brand new tech that nobody's seen before, except for that 20 years ago was innovative. We just changed it around for modern architectures. I don't know. Do you see? final thought here. Do you think will we actually see fully implemented zero trust networks and architectures in anything but brand new startups?
Yeah, I mean, I guess it depends on how you define fully implemented zero trust, because again, most of the solutions cover some portion of the circle of it, but not the whole circle. So I don't know that it would be fair to say like out of the gate full zero trust at the up and down the stack with things. It's going to be incremental for most organizations, but I think most organizations will want to get there will get there at maybe 70 to 80% in the next 36 months.
Well, if we can solve the minimizing, the least privilege, if we could marry the least privilege model across network and identity and data, I think we would solve about 90% of security's problems, right? Where the identity you have has access to certain things and only certain things at certain times for certain reasons. Like if we could figure that out,
I think we could put that on the hit list, Raf. Like that's not going to happen now, right? We could create a light bulb that lasts forever, but we're not going to do it. We're going to make sure we don't do that.
Fair enough. All right, JJ, thanks for joining us. This has been fun. Like I said, we'll do this. We'll do this again. And what's the name of the new place again?
The new company, it's Vision Security, but it's VISZEN.
Oh. VISZEN. Now, why did you pick that spelling?
Well, Zen, like Zen.
Got it.
Zen, balance.
Vision. But got it. All right. Well, we wish you all the great success and luck, and but I also wish you enough downtime so you can sleep and enjoy. I feel like you're either going to have to be super successful or get a chance to sleep, but maybe you're not going to get both. So
I'm working towards both. I think I'm going to do both.
All right. Well, hey, if you figure that out, you come tell me and get on the show and tell us how you did it, because we want to know.
You were going to do both until you were on this show, and now you're not.
You're welcome. We've broken that. Thank you so much. All right. That was JJ. Thanks for joining us, madam. It was fantastic having you on board. Good luck in your endeavor. James, as always, a good time. That was edutaining.
Yes. Duct tape security, man. It's coming out.
Hashtag duct tape security. I don't think I've seen that. So maybe you created like an offshoot podcast or something interesting that does like come on the show anonymously. Tell us your use case horror stories, and we'll try to have everybody learn from the mistakes that you've been a part of. That might be fun. If you're interested, let us know. Anyway, thanks for listening, folks. This has been another Down to Security podcast episode. Man, Down to Security Rabbit Hole podcast episode. I just heard myself say it in my head in slightly distinct fashion. It has been a long day, but great conversation. Thanks for joining us, guys. We will catch you another time, another place, on yet another Down the Security Rabbit Hole podcast. Ciao, y'all.
As we fade out on another Down the Security Rabbit Hole episode, we'd like to encourage you to chat with our hosts and guests using the Twitter hashtag #DtSR. Please check out the show notes, catch up on any episodes you may have missed, and subscribe so you don't miss a future episode. So on behalf of Rafal, James, for now it's goodbye. We'll see you soon on another Down the Security Rabbit Hole